So I made a video called the same as the book, Generative AI in a Nutshell. Just sat down in my cabin and just made this drawing video, put it out there, and was really surprised at how viral that thing became. Like, kind of really surprised. The thing is cool about is this product, which has like 200 million active users, that we shipped every week to production to all these players. Traditionally, you might need 4 or 5 or 6 people in an agile team to cover all the different competence you need, the domain knowledge to be able to deliver a feature in a semi-complex product. But if that team has access to AI has this incredible domain knowledge about almost anything. So as long as you have the skills to unlock that, then you really no longer need a 6-7 person team. You can do the same or even more with.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Danda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable.
Dear friend, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm your I messed it up. I'm your host, Paddy Danda, and on today's show, I have a guest who doesn't really need an introduction because he's a legend in the agile and product world. But I'm going to give him one anyway. Henrik Kniberg is a globally respected agile coach, product thinker, and visual storyteller whose work has shaped how teams build software, scale agile, and collaborate more effectively. He's worked for iconic companies like Spotify, Lego, and the people behind Minecraft, and many more. And is best known for creating those brilliant in a nutshell videos that somehow explain the messiest of concepts in just a few stick figures and arrows. And in his latest book, he's termed it Generative AI in a Nutshell: How to Survive and Thrive in the Age of AI. And it couldn't be more timely. So, Henrik, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. I only fluffed that once. So, yeah, there we
That's
go.
good. That's good.
That must be my nerves. You know, when you meet your like superstar or your hero, I think that's my nerves playing at me there. So, no, really appreciate you taking the time today, Henrik, and you're looking well. Look, I'm going to jump straight into it. You know, there's so much we could talk about, but I'm going to ask you a really big question to start with. So, what's the most exciting project or product that you've had the privilege to work on, and why?
The one I'm working on right now, building an agent platform. It's fascinating.
Oh,
it's like I've become an AI shrink / psychologist who's created this weird world where there's AI figures that do useful stuff, but sometimes need some feedback.
Oh, wow. So if I was explaining this to my 13-year-old son, how do I talk him through this?
Well, you explain. AI friends that do work and do the boring stuff for you, so you can do the fun stuff.
Got it. And is that for pretty much anything that you need to get done, or is it for specific things?
It's typically business kind of things. Any kind of work that just takes a bunch of time that doesn't feel like well spent time for you. So it could be things like doing maybe business intelligence research, or routing an invoice to the right department, or trying to establish if this or that bug is most important, or just stuff that you need to do often that feels kind of boring and you kind of would love to not have to do. And if you had an executive assistant, that would be the first thing you asked them to do. That's the kind of stuff.
Got it. And I'm going to, again, try and take you back in time. So you've worked with many teams, many great organizations. Are there any standout teams that you've worked with? And could you tell me what was special about them? What's that secret ingredient?
I think so. I've been lucky to work with several teams that I consider to be really good at what they do. But I think one that stands out is probably the team I worked with at Mojang in my team with where we did Minecraft development. In fact, I would say all the teams there I found it was so exciting that they were so truly passionate about their product. I don't think I've been to any place where people to that deep extent cared about the product and the users of the product. So that's really fun, like intrinsic motivation on steroids.
Wow. And like, could you just give us a flavor for a typical day of working with that team? I'm trying to sort of compare and contrast teams that I've worked with, and what is it that makes them so enthusiastic? And you mentioned there, really kind of they were a standout team for you. So Was it something that you did? Was it something that the leadership did? What was it that created that ingredient?
I think part of it is just the nature of the product. It's a game. It's a very fun and popular game, and that tends to be the team is there because they love the game. So it starts kind of there. But I think another part of it is the culture, and I'm not going to take any responsibility for that. I came in later, right? But the culture of hire really the people that really care about the product, and then let them do their thing and don't constrain them too much. That I think is part of it. Another is the feedback loop. This what I think is cool about is this product, which has like 200 million active users that we shipped every week to production to all these players. So we always had this super fresh feedback from real players on the stuff we're working on this week. So that gives also a natural kind of motivation of where you're always connected to the real work, the real users. Yeah, those I guess some possible ingredients.
If you were looking back at your sort of previous talks or writing, what do you feel has changed your mind in recent years about, say, Agile as an industry? Because I know you from the Agile industry.
Well, yeah, Agile. When I kind of bumped into it a bunch of years back, I felt like, oh, this is a great way to work. This is this is nice, right? We have more fun. We have more fun. We build better stuff faster. Have happier customers. Like, what's to complain about? Um, so I think the principles I think are pretty timeless. Work in small teams, work iteratively, get feedback. Um, but the practices are now changing a lot because of AI. So that's kind of interesting to see just how many things are just turned upside down, especially the fact that software is now something that's no longer something that just developers can do. And that changes the whole equation in a sense. Plus, and developers that understand how to use AI effectively are 10x or 100x more productive. And that also changes the whole equation. And that's kind of interesting just to follow what are the ramifications of this on the way we work and the way we organize work.
Yeah, which then sort of brings us on to the book. And because I'm really keen to know your view in terms of how work will change for not just Agile teams, but any team really, because I think it's equally applicable. So, first of all, what inspired you to write the book and why now?
It's a little bit random, like most of my books, but I started working with this AI stuff full time about a little more than 2 years ago, and because I got mesmerized by it and just kind of really astonished by the power of it, and also the fact that it's just improving all the time. So I put all my focus on that, and started building stuff and started a company and started learning and sharing knowledge. And then after about a year of that, my head was full and exploding, so I had to get it out. So I made a video called the same as the book, Generative AI in a Nutshell. Just sat down in my cabin and just made this drawing video, put it out there, and was really surprised at how viral that thing became. Like, kind of really surprised. And then, of course, after releasing the video, I learned a lot more. And the video is just 18 minutes, so I had to really compress. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to say that I couldn't fit in that time because I wanted the video to be something that people have the attention span to watch to the end, which is about 18 minutes. So after about a year, I'm like, my head was full again, and I needed to do something. So I decided to write a book following the same style of the video because that format worked well. But just adding a lot more details and a lot of more practical stuff and examples. So that was really the background. I just learned stuff. I was inspired. Plus, I met a lot of people that were kind of worried, and I wanted to give them a sense of hope that this is a tool that can help you. And also just kind of spread this feeling of like, hey, if you learn to use this tool, it kind of gives you superpowers. And I wanted to just spread that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, the video's amazing. And I had the opportunity to speak to you about the thought process of how you put that together when you joined Grant and I on the Visual Jam meetup, which was phenomenal. People still ping us about that, saying, I can't believe you had Henrik telling you how he does this. And it was so good to watch that.
Yeah, I often refer people to that video because I always get the question, "How do you make the videos?" I'm like, "Hey, you know what? I talked about it on that episode, so go check it out." Like,
oh, brilliant! And your video's done like, I don't know, is it over 4 million views or something now? It's
I
ridiculous.
think it passed 3 million a few weeks ago.
Right.
But I was really surprised because I didn't expect it to really. I guess it hit a nerve somehow.
For sure. And the question I had actually around the naming of the book. So you chose this term survive and thrive.
Yeah.
Or like, why was that? And what are the biggest threats you see for teams that are currently working today that AI may pose for them?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there is a lot of risk involved with AI because it's a very powerful tool. It's like when we invented, like nuclear power or electricity or even fire. These technologies are very powerful, but with power comes danger. My book does not address that so much. It's not so much about the societal aspects of it, although I do touch upon it. I'm thinking more a little bit about the individual as a person in your life and work. Assuming AI doesn't destroy the world, then how can you make the best of this technology, right? Then survive in this respect really means, I think people who don't know how to understand how to use this technology effectively will struggle. And for the same reason, if you think of someone today refusing to use the internet, right, it's going to be hard to get a job and keep it because you're just going to be so slow and kind of handicapped by not using the internet, not being able to send email, not being able to surf. It's something that just everyone does all the time. And I see that happening with Gen AI as well. So I kind of want to help people before it's, maybe maybe you don't need to lose your job, right? But when a company, if a company downsizes, they're obviously gonna, the people that are at most risk are, of course, the ones who are not, using the latest tools to be as productive as possible. And it was so extra clear to me as a developer, because I've done a lot of development, that okay, not using AI today is kind of like coding on Notepad without using the internet. Like, sure, you can do that, and if you're really hardcore, that's kind of cool, but no one's going to pay you for it, right? So that's, I guess, what I mean by the survive part. And the thrive part is just yeah, it kind of, when you learn to use the tools, you can spend more of your time on higher level stuff and less of your time on kind of low value stuff that you kind of don't want to do. And that's really exciting. So I just want to show people a little bit of the practicalities, because another thing I learned is that to really make use of AI, you need access to good models, you need access to good tools, but maybe most importantly, you need skills. It's a competence, prompt engineering, knowing which tools are good for what, knowing how to spot hallucinations, knowing to find the right use cases. That's just a skill. And like any skill, you just practice, and there are techniques and stuff. So in this book, I try to share some of that.
Yeah, I love that. I was looking at this the other day where I think somebody said it online about how when you're prompting, it's a sort of an agile process. It's an iterative process.
Yes. Yeah.
I was doing some research for, I mentioned to you just before we kicked off that I'm starting this journey of writing a book, and I've been using AI to help with the research. And like, there's so many times where I just keep going back and forth, and it's never a perfect answer, or it's never given me everything I need in the
Yeah.
first prompt, and so you keep going back and forth, and it's quite interesting
Yeah.
how that interaction evolves over time, isn't it?
Yeah. I used the AI a lot when I wrote my book, but not to write the book, but more like as a sounding board, and as sometimes it would help to write a draft for an article, for a chapter that I could then fiddle with. But just, it's like having this super editor next to you who's always available, just helping you. And it's really nice because, yeah, again, you can focus on the message you want to get across rather than the technical aspects of writing the book, which is nice.
And there was a blog article you wrote, and it really inspired me. And I wrote a blog article on top of your blog article, which wasn't as good as yours, but it received a lot of attention. And I titled it provocatively, "Are Agile Teams Dead?" Like, the way we see Agile teams today is at the end. Could you share a few insights from your article and the thinking that you were putting out there? Because I'm sure a lot of people sat at home perhaps haven't really contemplated what that future might look like.
Yeah. I hardly remember what I wrote in the article. It must have been a year and a half ago or something. Was it the one, "Our developers needed in the age of AI," or something like that?
I
Or was it
forget the
something
name,
else?
but it was very much about the kind of concept of having super teams, and you'll have the agentic AI helping teams, and
Yeah. All
probably
right.
I remember this one thing really vividly you said in there, which was, typically, like, you probably only need one person and a whole bunch of AI agents, but it's nice to have two humans, so you've got someone to talk
Yes.
to.
Yeah. This is very concrete for me. It's not theoretical. It's practical. I'm living this, and seeing it both in my own teams and my clients. It's just, when you really learn how to use these tools. Traditionally, you might need 4 or 5 or 6 people in an agile team to cover all the different, to cover all the competence you need, the domain knowledge to be able to deliver a feature in a semi-complex product. But if that team has access to AI has this incredible domain knowledge about almost anything. So as long as you have the skills to unlock that, then you really no longer need a 6-7 person team. You can do the same or even more with a 1 or 2 person team. But then my experience is it's nice to have a human to bounce ideas with. So I kind of landed on maybe the ideal team is 2 people and an AI, and maybe those 2 people are a developer and the customer and the AI, where everyone is involved in the coding. The exact constellation might vary, but small teams I think are going to become the norm. And I hope that, like, by that I don't mean they should start firing everybody. It's more like you'll have more teams, but they're smaller, right? So instead of firing people, give everyone superpowers, and now you can accomplish with 2 or 3 people what you needed 8 for, and now you can do more stuff, right? Or spend more effort into what you're doing now to do it better. But that seems to me like a pretty clear future that we're moving towards, and not just within Agile or software. I think within most domains where you used to need these larger teams, you can now do smaller teams because you have this AI colleague, and that I think is going to change the nature of work quite a lot. Because, for example, if you have a 6 or 7 person Scrum team and you do 2 or 3 week sprints, there's a bit of coordination involved in that, and therefore we typically need things like sprint planning meetings and daily stand-ups and boards. But if this is a 2 person team with an AI, and you're doing like no sprints at all, or maybe 1 week at most, and you're shipping stuff every day, then you don't really need sprint planning meetings, and you really don't need daily stand-ups either, because you're just sitting next to each other talking, and you get this very natural kind of more like Kanban, like constant flow. And then sure, it's nice to sometimes take a step back. So for us, that's a weekly cycle. We take a step back and say, okay, what are we focusing on? What did we do? What are we going to focus on next? It's like a super lightweight version of sprint planning. But yeah, I find that pretty much all the ceremonies and artifacts and stuff that we're used to doing in Agile, you just kind of have to go back and rethink. Wait a sec, why were we doing this before, and do we need to do it now, or do we need to do it differently? And in most cases, I find that, yeah, you need to do it differently.
And so what skill set and role then would that human or 2 humans in that team be bringing to the table? So, for example, if I'm today a business analyst
Yeah.
in this new world, what might my role look like, and what sort of skill set should I be building?
It's a little bit similar to, if we take the software example. In the past, software was machine code and assembly language, and you had to figure out how to put the right number into the right register, kind of, and garbage collect it later on. That was your focus, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then a higher level programming languages came, and now you don't worry as much about the memory registers. You focus more on what is the algorithm here, and you describe the algorithm, but in detail. So a for loop and a variable and some structures. You just change what you focus on, and now it's the next level of that. So now you're not worrying about, where do I put the damn semicolon in this programming language, or the curly brace or whatever. It's more like, what problem am I trying to solve? So as a programmer, you become a little more like a product owner and an architect, and you worry less about the actual specifics of the lines of code. So in general, I think it's just your job is to be a problem solver, or a problem formulator, a problem describer, a problem splitter, and really be the domain expert in this context, and the stakeholder, trying to identify what problem are we trying to solve. And as it is today, that the AI models are not good enough to completely take over all coding. So if it is a fairly complex product, if it's a simple product or a standalone app, AI can pretty much do it alone with a little bit of prompting. But if it's something more complex, like a platform or something, then there will be like architecture and coding involved, but the AI will do most of the kind of grunt work in that job. And then your job as a team or analyst is more to set the boundaries, to give feedback, to follow up, to write the prompts, check quality, ensure the architecture is good. Just basically working at a higher abstraction level.
And do you see, like, I guess it's not anytime soon, but a world where the AI almost then does all of that as well? So then the humans almost, I don't know what the human would do, but as it gets more intelligent, there's this tipping point where it does become way more intelligent than human beings, and even much better at decision making, identifying those problems, etc.
Yeah. The bounds for what AI models can do is really increasing really fast. So it can do things now that were inconceivable a year ago, and the same thing a year ago compared to the year before. So in that sense, you might look at the trend and say, okay, all humans are unemployed in 5 years. But then if you look historically, that's not how it works, right? In the past, most humans worked in agriculture because we had to. And now we have machines. So most of us don't work in agriculture. So what do we do instead? Well, somehow we still stay very busy.
Yeah.
right? We just make up new jobs. And so we invented electricity, right? We invented the printing press, all these technologies, or the internet, right? That just suddenly all this work that had to be done manually didn't need to be done manually. So unemployment rate should be like 99% by now, but it's not. So what happens is we just keep automating stuff, and then we there's a period of turbulence as jobs disappear, and then new jobs get invented that nobody could have even imagined before. So I'm a little bit curious about what those new jobs are going to be, because historically, those new jobs have always been something that people couldn't imagine before. So it's going to be interesting to see what those jobs are, but they're probably not going to be things like typing lines of code.
It's really interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day on this exact topic, and they were saying that we end up creating these jobs and these roles that we could never ever comprehend. And someone was saying, imagine telling my grandfather that one day I'm going to need this person who's a personal trainer, and this personal trainer is going to every day prompt me to go out and exercise. And then they're going to be there pushing me, and they're going to be, instructing me how to exercise and all of this.
Yeah. What a bizarre, right? It's, or even what we're doing right now,
Yeah.
right? What we're doing right now is kind of a job in a sense. Imagine explaining to someone 200 years ago, this job and why it's important, trying to convince them that this is an important job. I'm pretty sure they'll just laugh in our face and say, no, you guys are just playing. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what new stuff, because I mean, humans are humans. We're still here. Doesn't matter what we do with AI. We're still, we're still here. We want to do stuff, and nothing can really stop us from doing stuff. And whatever that stuff is going to be, we'll see, and we'll see in the future. I guess it'll just keep shifting. I think the difference is that it's the change is so fast now. So in past kind of tech revolutions have been kind of slow. So I think this one is going to be a bit tougher on many people because of the speed of change. Where a job that you had suddenly might just become completely turned inside out. And then that's one of the things I kind of push in the book, because I think for the most part it's not jobs disappearing. Like, yeah, there are some jobs that disappear, but for the most part I think it's more tasks disappearing. And then it's the people who has the job needs to adapt the way they work. And I think that's where there's a lot of people that are going to thrive if they understand this. But if they don't understand it, then they're going to kind of run into trouble.
The Agile Manifesto, the first value says individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And I was like, is that really true now? Like, is that all wrong in this futuristic world? There was another white paper I was hearing about. I think Google wrote it, and it was talking about kind of the future of experience. And today we talk about user experience, and a lot of what we build on websites and apps, it's all about the human using the product. And in the future, if we've got these agents that are shopping on our behalf, are we now designing for them? And does that completely change the game?
Yeah, the way I think of it there is, when you design a product, you need to think about your different stakeholders, right? And you typically have more than one type of stakeholder. And I think increasingly often, one of your types of stakeholders you need to take into account is AI agents. But it's just one stakeholder, right? So you have your e-commerce site or your whatever travel site, and there's going to be people going in there to book for themselves. There's going to be travel agents coming in, and there's going to be AI agents. And if you can make a product that caters to all three, then you're probably going to do better. But it's also a UX question that the AIs have a little different needs for their usability. And right now they sometimes struggle because they're using the same interface as us, which is pixels on a screen. And sure, they can kind of see and understand vision, but we're better at that, right? So they're a little bit handicapped, and that's why it's really expensive and slow when you have an AI trying to scrape a website and try getting an AI to order a pizza for you. It's really hard, right? But if this pizza place has a little API, then it's really easy. So I think that's with that mindset, I think it's a useful mindset to have. Think of it as a stakeholder and design for it like you do with your other stakeholders.
And you mentioned you're currently working with clients and they're doing this stuff now. Is there anything you could share on that side, just to give people a taste of what you're seeing at that kind of forefront of this technology?
Yeah, the background was I started tinkering with this technology when it started working, kind of about a little more than 2 years ago. And then this gradually morphed into company. We just renamed ourselves. We're called Abundly, and it's now we're 8 or 9 people. And what we do basically is we help companies. Like we realize that agents is where the value is. And an agent to us is like, if you take an AI chat, right? an AI chat can be compared to a person that you hired who sits at his desk sleeping all day until you go talk to them. And then they wake up and do something for you. Then they go back to sleep again. That's what an AI chat is, right? Of course, this guy is super smart and super helpful once you wake him up. But when you're not there talking to him, he's sleeping at his desk. An AI agent is the equivalent of a colleague that actually does stuff and has a job and takes responsibility. So in practical terms, for example, let's say an invoice router. Let's say you have invoices that got to get to the right department. An AI agent that does that would be like, I would tell it, hey, listen, Bob, whatever his name is, your job is to watch your email, and whenever invoices arrive in your email, then you should check what it is and figure out, is this reasonable? Is the amount too high or something? Check against these policy documents, right? Check if the date looks right. If you see anything fishy, ping us on Slack, right? Otherwise, just route it to the right department. Send it by email to the right department. Maybe tag it. And here, by the way, is a document describing our org structure, so you can figure out which department this should be sent to. And then maybe every day I want you to log the invoices that you've processed, so we can ask you later on. That's an AI agent, right? So it uses typically a large language model as its external brain, because it needs to make judgment calls. It needs to read a fluffy document. It needs to understand what it means. It's got to make all these judgment calls that require a little bit of intelligence, but not a whole lot. And it needs tools. It needs to be able to send and receive email, talk to Slack, create documents. And it needs some level of autonomy, right? For example, in this case, reacting to incoming emails. And maybe I'll tell it, every Friday, I want you to send a summary. Now it's being triggered by. So those are the elements of an agent. And what we've done is built a platform for this. So we've made a platform where making an agent is as easy as I just described. You just create, new agent, and you start talking to it, and you describe what its job is, just like you would for an intern that comes in. And then once you've agreed on what the job is, then the agent says, okay, should I save this now? Are we ready to go? And I say, yes. And then now it's ready to go. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, I go back and say, hey, agent, I have some feedback for you. I think your invoices are, I want you to write a summary. Or I think you flag invoices too often. So you give it feedback, just like you would with your intern. So we very much use the metaphor of hiring somebody to do a job that requires some intelligence, but not a whole lot. And then you give them feedback, and then they basically take that job. And they will either, in some cases, involve humans a lot because it's a very iterative job. Well, in some cases, like routing the invoices, maybe you can do it completely autonomously. So that's basically it. And then as you get to more advanced use cases, you can create multiple agents like you would with a team and give them different jobs and have them collaborate. So maybe you have one agent whose job is to route the invoices. You have another agent who is an expert on compliance for some standard. They're just two different agents, but they can talk to each other. So sometimes invoice comes in, Bob here goes like, oh, wait a sec, this invoice has some compliance implications. I better go talk to Lisa. Hey, Lisa, can you check this invoice? Is it compliant with whatever standard? And then Lisa has all that knowledge. So then she comes back and says, no, it's not. You shouldn't do, you should cancel this or something. So this kind of stuff. To do this, you need some kind of platform. And that's what we've built. And then we help customers. In some cases, we assist customers when they want to build more complex agents. And in other cases, people just sign up and start building their own agents if they're a bit simpler. That was a long rant, but I hope it made it a little more clear.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of the uptake and some of the results you're seeing, what sort of improvements have you seen for organizations or people that are starting to use some of this capability?
So this whole field is quite new, right? So we're just starting to scratch the surface. But we've started seeing some recurring types of use cases that often are a good starting point. So the most common use case is actually a business intelligence research for our customers, because every company kind of needs to do that, wants to do that, and doesn't have time to do it as much as they would like to. So typically that involves checking what are our competitors up to, what are some new developments in our field, any new regulation, just kind of busy work that needs to happen. Perfect for an agent, because that kind of work normally doesn't require access to really sensitive data. It's not going to be life-changing decisions that agent makes. So you can very quickly build a useful agent with quite little effort. And then now you have this, weekly report maybe. Sometimes it's going to ping you and say, hey, this thing has just happened in your industry. You should be aware of this. And it can make it hyper-customized, both to your company, but also to you as an individual. So maybe you prefer to get a daily report while you're taking a walk in the morning. So you prefer to have a podcast, read to you using audio, while others want more like infographics. So that's one case. Another case, which is becoming more and more popular, is like analysis, classification. So we have one client that does, it's an investment company, and they every year they need to evaluate thousands of potential companies to invest in. So, and going through those prospects is a pain, and they hate it. So we made an agent that just does that. So it's basically goes through all the different companies, evaluates them, does research to find out information about that company, and basically classifies them into like, yeah, you should definitely look at this one. This one is a maybe, and this one is a no, and just makes a short list. And that agent was like, sometimes you can measure the impact, sometimes not. The research agents are a little more fluffy. People are like, yeah, this is great. It saves a lot of time for us, but it's hard to measure. This investment company there was actually measurable, because they could say we spent this many hours per year, and now it's like, it was crazy. It like saved them like thousands of hours per year, because it just goes through so much data in so short time. But also, to our surprise, what we like, the goal of that was mostly to save time. But then when we measured and compared what the AI did compared to what the humans did before, and compared side by side, we noticed that sometimes the AI made a different judgment call than what they had done in the past. We did like kind of retroactive comparisons just to see what would the agent have done last year, and we thought that would be basically a bug. We had to fix that. But then when they looked at it, our customer, they concluded that in most cases the agent decision was actually better, and that was a positive surprise. Not so much because it's smarter, I think, but more because it's infinitely patient. Right? It can take all those lines. It's never going to be tired. It's never going to be Friday afternoon, right? And it's always going to put full attention into every line of this sheet, and therefore it was often able to take more data into account and then make better decisions. So that was a very kind of big surprise to us, that it not only saved a vast amount of time, but actually helped them make better decisions.
Oh, wow.
Those are some examples.
Yeah, incredible. And so I have a hypothesis around the future of products. Not that I'm, one to be a thought leader on this, but I guess my thinking is, now that the barriers of entry to build software and products is becoming so low and it's becoming really accessible, I've been using Replit and Lovable and these sort of platforms to do some prompting and create just basic prototypes. I guess there's going to be a lot more products that people are going to now build, right? And
yeah, definitely. And a lot more, like I'm seeing that in our company. I find it astonishing, actually, that suddenly the whole build versus buy thing is just turned upside down. So there's a lot of cases now, for example, search engine optimization tools, course booking system, CMS for websites, all these things where you would never build your own. Duh, it's not your core business. Go buy something and use an open source. And now we find ourselves, to our surprise, saying like, you know what? I'm not going to spend days trying to find a SEO system that works for us, and then we're going to pay a bunch of money. It took just half a day to build what we needed ourselves, with some prompting, like literally half a day to build a. And this was a real example. We built an SEO tool for ourselves, specifically focused for our needs, and it looks really like, I'm like, what? We just built this? Like one guy who's not even a programmer just kind of prompted this with vibe coding in half a day, and it fits us perfectly. And it would have costed a lot of money to buy. So, and this is just with today's technology. It's getting better and better. So I think the trend is going to be companies just building the stuff they need when they need it, which means that SaaS companies are going to have to really rethink what their business is.
So then my other hypothesis was around the book that I'm writing, which is around product discovery and the importance of that going forward, because you could just keep churning out rubbish and no one's going to use it, or it's just not going to land with people. So when it comes to product discovery, like for you, again, maybe take me back to some of the examples from way back of where you've seen that kind of product discovery done really well, and what were some of the ways that certain companies are doing it well versus others?
Yeah, I guess I tend to oversimplify things a little bit, but to me, it kind of boils down to just minimizing the gap between the user and the maker. And if I'm going to say one theme, it's really that. And I think the most clear case was Spotify, where I noticed that this really had an effect, that teams that really shipped often and got real feedback just built better stuff. Spotify is and was quite data driven. So it would be, well, they were users of their own product, of course, but they would also do a lot of measuring, A/B testing, and dashboards and stuff. Then I worked at Lego, which was a lot more personal, less data driven, more like go out and meet the kids and see what they do with this prototype product, and learn from that. Mojang and Minecraft, same thing. Very much less data driven, more kind of user driven directly. So feedback, watch the live streams, meet players, and just look at what they're doing and where's the fun. But that requires a fast feedback loop. If you're not shipping often, then that loop is too slow. And it requires this very kind of humble culture of like, instead of spending a long time trying to figure out the right solution, you just figure out something simple and ship it and then get feedback. And that I think is really powerful. And I find that in our company now, it's I think one of the reasons why our we're such a small company, but our product, like, we're getting a lot of positive feedback. And I think a lot of it is because we're so aggressively, testing on the users and getting feedback. So in that sense, I think it really hasn't changed. I think AI doesn't change that so much, because great products happen when you really work close to the users, right? That's where Agile came from, right? And I think we just need to keep reminding ourselves that that's the case, and AI can help us do that even better. But the principle is still the same.
And how do you fit product discovery into the kind of the delivery schedule? So if we think about Scrum as a framework, or something like Scrum, where we have these small iterations, I see a lot of teams that really fixate on delivering stuff.
Yeah.
And
Sausage factory.
filling the time, right? And so, like, how do you do product discovery in that environment? Is it something that you do one sprint ahead? Is it something you do in parallel? What's a good model that you've seen?
I think the key thing there is to treat Scrum as a framework, which is what it is, and not go too deep into like, oh, we need to do the practices this or that way. So from a framework perspective, sure, it's a feedback loop, it's a time box. And that feedback loop is a lot about delivering value and learning. But how important is delivering value versus learning? That depends a little bit on where you are in the life cycle of your product. In the early phase, it's all about learning. Later on, maybe it's more about just delivering value. And somewhere in the middle, it's going to be mixed, right? We got these things that we know are going to deliver value. We got these ideas for future improvements that we don't know are going to deliver value. So we need a discovery kind of hat on. And so in the early phases, typically the Scrum framework is still useful, but we're not delivering features. We're delivering insights. So definition of done is not for this, a sticky note on the wall is not going to be ship this feature, and definition of done is it's in production. Instead, the note is going to be write a spike or do a prototype for this. And definition done is you have showed something to a user and gotten real feedback, maybe. And then 80% of the stuff on your board are never going to get shipped, because that's the whole point, right? I find the value and focus on that, and then discard the rest. So early on, that's one way of using it. Basically hacking the definition of done and saying it doesn't mean shipping features to customers, it means learning something. And then later on in the process, I find typically teams mix this. So when you're doing your sprint planning, you're basically negotiating with your POs and your stakeholders and saying, okay, what's important right now? We got these 3 bug fixes, we got these 3 feature improvements, and we got these 2 ideas which we want to explore. So so we have 2 kind of exploratory, discovery stories in our sprint. And then we basically just, plan it like everything else. We're a team, we have a limited capacity. How much of our capacity are we going to spend on delivery versus discovery this sprint? Those are some patterns I've seen.
How does that change in the new world? Like, do the principles still stay the same, or
I think so, yeah. But the how changes. Like traditionally, you could only do discovery with real users. Now you can make up AI personas to act as real users. It doesn't completely replace the real thing, but it helps you. So you can do user testing with an AI agent, and it can help you find the biggest design mistakes in your product, and you can fix those, and then you go to the real user. The difference is that the AI user is always there. You can ask it any number of questions; it'll never get tired of you. While the real users, you have to treat a little bit more carefully, right? So it's a great complement. I guess that's one example of how it kind of changes. Another example is you can do more real-time discovery. Traditionally, you wouldn't be coding with your user because coding is slow. So you might be doing wireframes or showing them mockups. But now you can sit with a real user and you can actually build working code in live, right in front of them. And then you can listen to them, show them a prototype, have them test it, and then based on their feedback, you make another prototype in about 20 seconds, and you show it again, and you can iterate together essentially. So I think as a user and as a maker and a user, you can much more co-create instead of like having a meeting and then going away and then coming back. You can literally sit there and co-create, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be That'd be magical, wouldn't it? I remember working for an investment bank, and maybe having a trader sat next to me would have been so cool to be able to
Yeah.
actually knock something up together.
And there were some companies and teams that could do that in the past, but it was a little bit like a macho thing, right? If you are like a super awesome developer, then yeah, you can sit next to a customer and they like, how about this? And you're like, you just get it to work because you're just an amazing developer. But it's just that so few people could pull that off, right? You have to be like a genius level developer. But the nice thing is now you don't need to be a genius. You just need to be damn good at prompting and have really good AI tools, which is cool.
Question on my mind, Henrik. You said you've been looking at this stuff for like 2.5 years. And I think I was just playing with ChatGPT as it was a little toy. And how do you learn this stuff? Like, what are some of the ways you stay ahead of the game? Because you're clearly 6 months to a year ahead of many other people, if not more. How do you do that? Because I think it's really important for all of us to make that kind of learning.
Yeah, it's funny when you say I'm ahead because I always feel like I'm behind. So I guess it's all just relative compared to who you compare to, right? But yeah, for me, people learn differently. I learned by playing around and building stuff mostly. So when this came, I just sat down and started tinkering and do that today as well. Just a lot of tinkering around. Yeah, that's my short answer. But I also learned by teaching. Like when I have tinkered around and started understanding something, then I typically do a talk or I teach a course or something, and then I have to explain it to someone else. And then the learning deepens a little bit. And then when I work with others, I hear their questions and then I see what they do. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I learn even more. So I think there's a lot of learning in the teaching as well. Or for example, when I learned a lot when writing my book, because now I had to, make it clear, right? And that made me have to think even deeper about things. So that's really useful. Like making my videos, then I have to really like, oh, how am I going to get this concept across in like 15 minutes? Then I got to really figure it out. So that's yeah. What about you? How do you learn?
Oh, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. I think that's one of my secrets is when I'm walking the dog or I'm doing the school run, I really try and have a lineup of podcasts that I can listen to.
Right.
Just like really diverse stuff as well. It doesn't have to be about the subject matter I'm thinking about. It could be something completely unrelated. And I think that's one of them. I'm not a big reader. Like I've got loads of books behind me, but I've probably read like 5, if that many. But I skim books, but I don't read them deeply generally. And now that I'm writing my own book, I am stocking up more books, and I'm trying to force myself to read them. But that's a tough one, I think.
So are you writing the book for yourself as audience? A kind of book that you would read?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm trying to really make it relatable and thinking about if I was this person, and I do picture myself as the reader because I was a business analyst. It's mainly targeted at business analysts to sort of help people navigate this new world and focus on that kind of product discovery.
Cool.
And then this podcast helps me hugely because I get
can imagine,
amazing people like yourself. So I always get inspiration from people. And I've had the most really diverse people. I've had a psychic medium who was telling me I had a spirit on my right shoulder. So yeah, some really crazy stuff on the podcast.
You actually do have a spirit on your right shoulder.
Yeah, now you have me worried.
Still there. Looks hungry.
So, Henrik, as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you one of my favorite questions, which I gave you no warning on, but it's the question I normally end the show on. So if I could give you any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, so get rid of this thing, what would that be? What's the thing that really knocks you where you think, God damn, why do we have that?
Oh, wow. Abolish something in the world of work. That's interesting. What would I abolish? I would say boring meetings, maybe, but that's maybe a bit too general. Oh, yeah. I know what it is. Time reports.
Oh.
Let them die.
Timesheets. Yep.
Ironically, I find that timesheets are mostly just a waste of said time.
Yeah. Why are they a waste of time? What's the thing that really knocks you about them?
Because the time I spend writing a timesheet, I could spend adding value. And it gives this illusion. Not only that, when I create a timesheet, if I'm very unlucky, then some has to read it.
Right.
And what decisions are they making based on that? And it's just all these dysfunctions I find caused by it. There are some cases where it might be useful at a high level, like knowing roughly how much of our capacity are we spending on this or that project, or if we're, if a customer is paying for the time. But this kind of sometimes bureaucratic need comes in to kind of control what people are spending time on in detail. And I find that just does nothing but cause misconceptions and sub-optimization and a waste of time. I actually wrote an article called How We Got Rid of Time Reports, where it's probably still Googleable. So How We Got Rid of Time Reports, I wrote this story about how, as a CTO at a company, I made this personal project of getting rid of them and succeeded. So I was pretty happy about that.
Oh, wow. I need that article because I have to do timesheets at the moment. And yeah, I've actually reminds me I'm going to have to do mine for this month because I'm off next week.
So what normally happens if I come to a company, and now I don't do as much coaching, but if I do come to a company and I find that people are spending a lot of time with timesheets, where someone comes to me and asks me like, hey, could you introduce timesheets here, or could you write a timesheet? I'll just start going into the root cause, like, what do you need it for? What decisions are you going to make based on that? And then I suggest some alternative to achieve that goal, not via timesheets. And it's usually a lot better because often the underlying goal is usually real. Like, it's fair. There's an underlying need that someone has. And I think that's worth respecting. But timesheets is usually just not the right way to achieve that goal. So that's normally the angle I take.
I feel it's a bit like Tetris because eventually you just end up trying to make up the numbers anyway. So you just move things around
to fit, right?
That's what I do.
So that's what we ended up with at that company. I learned that the reason why they use is just to be able to figure out if people should be paid overtime, and things like that. And the rule I introduced was, let's assume everyone is just working the normal 40 hours, and if someone is working overtime, then work a little bit less some other day. Manage that time with your team. And the only time you need to talk to me as a manager is if there is like an anomaly, like I'm going to need to work a lot of overtime and I'm going to need overtime pay. Then we'll handle that as an anomaly. And therefore we don't have to do timesheets. We handle exceptions as exceptions. So that was very nice.
Oh,
but that made people work less overtime. And yeah, it was better.
Excellent. Well, Henrik, just remind us the name of the book. Where can people get it from?
It is right here. Ta-da! Generative AI in a nutshell. Same name as the video. You can find it in the usual places for books, Amazon, etc.
Amazing. Has it got the little doodles as well, like that go with the video?
It's full of doodles right here. It's a doodle. It doodles everywhere.
Okay, I'm buying it. I'm going to stick it on my shopping list.
Human written doodles, human drawn doodles.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. I'm going to definitely be adding it to my Amazon list. And
cool. You can add it to the list, to the pile of books you haven't read back there.
Looks good though.
I think like videos are, or like the video versions for the people who don't like to read books.
Yeah,
right?
That's why I loved it so much. Yeah. Henrik, thank you so much. I am really grateful for the time today, and I know you're such a busy man, so really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed the conversation.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.